Hi, welcome to Living as Latinas. I'm Jakira and I have my co host here, Audi.
Hello.
On this week's episode, we will be discussing the meaning of self love. There have been a lot of talk about self love everywhere. You see it everywhere throughout the years, and it all sounds great. But what does it actually mean? Like, how do we love ourselves and why does it matter? Stay tuned as we discuss our experiences with self love and the misconceptions that we have had.
So, self love means that you accept yourself fully with the good, the bad, the ugly, everything. And you treat yourself with kindness and you respect yourself and you nurture your growth and well being. And that sounds really cool. But
Yeah,
how do you do that?
right?
How do you know if you're doing that?
I think it's hard, right? It's really hard to figure that stuff out.
And it means something different for different people because everybody has a different way of taking care of themselves
Mm.
mentally and physically and all of that. So figuring it out um, can look different, but I think it's really important to be able to do that, especially to be able to take care of yourself mentally.
Hmm. And I think about this like recently, somebody in my family came up to me and they're like in my house and they're like writing in their notebook. I'm not going to mention names, but they're like writing in their notebook something very private. Y yo, que soy la intermetida, and I'm like, ¿qué tú estás escribiendo? Like, she's like, nothing. And I was like, oh, what is it? What is it? And they're like, oh, I'm figuring out what self-care and self-love is. And I was
Ah,
like, that's really awesome. I was like, I'm glad you're doing that. And then they were like asking me because, if you're a mental health counselor, people are like, you're the expert in this topic, And I'm like, well, it can mean different things, but some of the
yeah.
things that I do, and then I talked to her about some of the stuff that I did. So I think it's cool that we're talking about this week.
But let me just tell you that that just gave me like an extra responsibility that I don't want. Like, being a mental health counselor and having to know what self love is, I feel like I just recently started to think about that. I have never taken the time to think about that. I don't think I have used those words in that way together before.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I have talked about um, self care. I have talked about self esteem, but I don't think that that's what we're talking about here, right? Like,
Mm-mm.
I feel like it's different and the same at the same time, but like we're talking about something more profound than
Yes.
having like a high self esteem or to be able to do things for yourself for
Mm-hmm.
self care, right?
Yeah. So let's talk about then, like, before kind of we go into more in depth about this, let's talk about what self love is not. And then maybe it'll be easier to kind of understand what it is.
Right.
So self love is not about comparing yourself to other to determine if you're good enough. And self love, so I think about in that one, right? People always tend to compare themselves to other people. I know I do this myself and I have a hard time with it. I'm always like, people around me, and then I'm just like, oh, they have this and why don't I have that? Or they're
Mhm.
getting this and why can't I get that? Or I see this and why am I not there in my life,
Mhm.
versus other people. And I think that that's like a human thing that we all tend to do, right?
Yeah, it
But
is.
it makes us it makes us very kind of like not value ourselves and what we do have when we start asking those questions, because we're like the whatnot, and it's just
Mhm.
not like it's negative vibes that you're giving yourself.
It is. I agree.
Mhm. Another one, it's not about putting yourself first at the expense of someone else's well-being.
Oh, that's a big one.
Yeah.
Because I think it can definitely be confusing when you start to do this and you're like, wow. So now I'm just gonna pay attention to myself and the things I want and the things I need, and I don't care about anybody else. Because if I do that, then I'm not loving myself. Well, there is, okay, calm down. There's
There's a
levels
balance.
to
Yeah, there's a
everything.
balance. Yeah. You can't just let everything go. You know, like las mujeres que they're like this, and then you see that they have like, I see like your people with that everything de marca, ¿verdad? Un carro, de todo, pero entonces no pueden pagar la renta, los niñitos
Mhm,
no tienen ropa, no tienen tenis, no tienen no tienen lápiz ni mascota, like notebooks to be able to do their schoolwork, but yet their
mhm.
mom has the newest cell phone and the newest car and the newest everything, you know, and it's like, what are you portraying? That's not self-love because tú estás
Right.
dejando the rest fall
Your
when
responsibilities.
it's not supposed to be that way.
Right.
Um, Another one, it's not always about winning or always getting your way.
That's a big one.
I know, I just
And
laugh when
so
I.
what you're saying is that at first we didn't really know what self-love was. And now it just made it more complicated.
Mhm.
But let's talk, let's now that we know what it's not, I think it's gonna be easier to then find out what it is, right?
Mhm.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the misconceptions. For example, putting yourself first is selfish. I don't remember where I got that from.
Mhm.
And I don't, and it's really interesting because I don't think that that was um, something that I learned through words. I don't think people told me that. I think that that came just by observing life. So I'll give you an example. My mom, for example,
Mhm.
I always heard her talk about, the minute I had Audi, all I did was just live for her and through her. And like I didn't go out, I didn't do this. All I did was work for her. So everybody else around me had the same story, right? So I think that it was only natural for me to then understand that if I'm putting myself first, it would be selfish because all these women were putting themselves last
Mhm.
and they were being praised for it.
Mhm.
And I really think that when I had my first baby, I was having a really hard time trying to figure it out where I belonged. Like, where in that process do I, out of the person, belong? Because now I have a baby. So that means that the baby's first. But I'm also a wife. So does that mean that my husband needs to be first? And then I'm also an employee. So my job is first. And I'm a daughter. So my parents are first. So when is it time for you to be somewhere in there?
Right. It's a lot balancing all those different roles at the same time.
Yes. And it's crazy that we get those messages because then, it's really hard to put them into perspective, I think.
Mhm.
To just go through life like reliving other people's experiences, but you don't even notice sometimes.
What do you think in that case, like how are you able to kind of find balance between all those things?
Well, I was not able to find balance for the longest time. I feel like I just found balance a few months ago.
Mhm.
And the balance have come from asking the question like, okay, so how is it? possible for me to make sure that my family is happy if I'm not happy? How am I going to do that? Because you can't give what you don't have.
That's so true.
So I really started from like the tiniest little simple question. And then I found out that I couldn't even answer that. And I took it from there and I was like, okay, so it's time to dig really, really deep here because something's wrong. I don't know what it is, but something's just not working. It's like a journey. You start and then you can't stop.
That's so true.
It is.
What about like self-care, another misconception that people have? Or it's just that self-care has nothing to do with self-love. Um, when you think about this, right? People always think like these two are not connected, that it's either one or the other, that they can't correlate together. But I think that it's important to be able to do both, right? Because you need to balance things and you need to figure out how to recharge your battery so that you feel good about yourself, so that other people around you see you. And like, especially our kids, if they see us being able to, practice self-care, practice self-love, doing the things that we need to do for us to be happy, then they're going to grow up with the same perception. Just like what you were saying about your mom, if you grow up with certain things around you, that's how you view it as being the way that it's supposed to be.
Right. The right way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And any other way, it's just not necessarily wrong, but not the way I want to go about it, right? But self-care is something I think that it's really helpful when someone is trying to figure it out, um, how's their self-love, right? Because if you never don't have time for something that you want to do, like say a manicure, and you never have time because you're doing all of these other things for all of these other people, how much are you loving yourself?
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, if you find time for a manicure every week, but you're doing it for the wrong reason, with the wrong intention, that's also a way to know where your self love is. Because if you're having this manicure because you want to show off, because you want other people to think that you're good, or you want other people to think that you're pretty and that you have everything under control,
Yeah.
then you're not loving yourself. You're not accepting where you are and what you're doing and what is happening to you.
Yeah.
So self-care, I think, can help in both ways to figure it out.
That's so true. I never thought of it like, but I definitely like, I see that like certain people who were like only get their nails done because they're like, don't look at my nails, that they're ugly. It's like your natural nails are beautiful too. They're a part of you. Like, accept it, But certain people only see themselves in certain ways so that they don't see that there's alternatives to that. Like,
Yes.
if you always do your hair straight, you feel like you're ugly because your hair's not straight. Where's the self-love in that? So that's kind of like digging deeper and figuring those things out, because there's not always going to be time when you're going to have the time to do your nails, to get a pedicure, to get your hair done, to do all these things. But you still need to be able to love yourself, right? And accept yourself tal y como tú eres. So
And that is something that it's way easier to say than to be able to do it, especially because we live in a time. I mean, we are being sold something to fix something every 5 seconds. I mean, let's just be real. If you're watching TV, you get 100 ideas in an hour of 100 things that are wrong with you. But hey, don't worry, we have the solution for you, right? Either you're too fat, or you're too skinny, or you're too pale, or you're too dark. Something's wrong with you. It doesn't matter where you are and what you're doing. And so if you're going to hop into that, how do you call it? You know, you're gonna go on that path, you're it's going to be really hard to find love for yourself because you're going to be complaining about something. And it's not about being true. Like, if that something might be true, everybody has something they don't like about
Yeah.
themselves, but that has nothing to do with self love. I think that is why it's so complicated to
Mm-hmm.
understand what self love is.
Yeah.
You can complain about something you don't like about yourself, but does that mean that you're going to put yourself down because of it? Does it mean that you're going to be depressed about it? Does it mean that you're going to go get a loan so you can go and get plastic surgery?
A BBL. Yeah. I mean, there's people that do that, and like, kudos to them if that's. I don't see things wrong with that perspective. I don't see things wrong with that, but I also think that that shouldn't be the only way, right?
And like I said, intention. So asking yourself, what is it that I'm looking for? Why is that I'm doing what I'm doing?
Mm-hmm.
Because some people just, for example, with the makeup, some people love makeup and they just don't go outside without makeup or whatever because that's their thing. And that's pretty cool, I think, for the people that can do that. I cannot, but some people can. And so, but are you doing that because you are ashamed of how your face looks without makeup? Are you doing that because you think that people are going to think you're ugly if they see you without makeup on? Or are you just doing that because you love makeup
Mm.
and it makes you feel better and energized? So that I think that la pregunta del millón is why? Why are you doing what you're doing?
Mm-hmm.
Are you pleasing yourself or are you trying to please somebody else?
That's so true. Yeah. Because I feel like if you were to say, like, having plastic surgery is not good for self love, I think that so many people will have different viewpoints on that, because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people get it. And I personally, like, if you're doing it, like you said, because it's something for you, like you've had, two kids and your body's gone through whatever, through hell and back. And you want to be like, you know what? I want to look better for myself because I want to make sure that I'm good for this. Then that's fine. So it just has to do
And
with your perception.
but now that you mentioned plastic surgery, there is like a syndrome that happens to people when they go and like have plastic surgery. I don't even know how to explain it. But so I know many, many, many people, right, who have had plastic surgery.
Hmm.
And I can tell you that 9 out of 10 people change their personality.
What do you
They
mean?
just they become so in, and I think that it has, this is a great example for what we're talking about, because I really think that in their heads it's about self-love. I think that that's what people are trying to understand and do. Because okay, I'll give you an example. So people go to the Dominican Republic and they come back with a whole new body. Then they start to dress differently.
Hmm.
If they were really modest before, now they're not. Now they want to show off, the new body. We're not talking here about anything being wrong, just, how people react to the surgery. Okay. There's nothing wrong with showing what you got. God gave it to you, show it off, whatever. But what I'm saying is, people who are modest, their whole lives, they go for plastic surgery, they come back, and they just become this different person, like a whole different personality. They
Hmm.
dress differently. Their post on Instagram is even different. They talk a lot about, um, women power, and we can do everything we want to do, and we are powerful, and more power to female, whatever. All of those things are great, but where is it coming from? Are you like trying to be somebody that you're not? Because you have a new body doesn't mean that you're a new person. And a new body
Mm-hmm.
is not going to give you the love for yourself that you would want or that you're looking for. That kind of have to come from within, from inside out, not outside in, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
No, that's totally, yeah. That has to be in the inside of you. Just because the outside changes doesn't mean that, you have to change who you are.
Yeah. And I think that that is a huge misconception about self-love. So if I love myself, that means that I would want to look good and I would like to, wear nice clothes and wear makeup and have a nice car. Okay. But how are you feeling inside when you're riding in this car?
Mm-hmm. No, that's
So
true.
it is complicated. Self-love is complicated. Who would It's crazy. You would think it'd be easy peasy, right?
Yeah, but it's
Oh,
not.
self-love. Yeah, I know how to do that.
It's not very easy. And then like trying when people ask you for the advice, it's like, okay, well, I can give you some guidance, right? There's certain things that I know that I do that work for me, that makes me feel good about myself. But like you need to sit down and you need to figure this out for yourself. Like,
Yeah, definitely. But you know what else we can do differently? Um, like for the next generation or whatever. I don't remember anyone ever in my personal life, in my school life, in my any life,
mm-hmm.
talking to me about self-love. I never
Mm.
had anyone mention that in my life.
And whose responsibility do you think that is? Like,
Well, that is a really good question. I don't even have an answer. I have never thought about whose responsibility is it.
because I know for like myself, and it's so funny because last night I was on Amazon looking for books for my girls, and since it's Black History Month, they have a whole bunch of books that are to empower children of color and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the books that I was looking at, it's about loving yourself, about loving your color, loving that you may look different than people around you, or your hair may
Right.
be different. And I was just really loving those books and those themes, and I was just like, this is awesome, this is good, because this is about self-love and loving yourself for how you are. And now, and I was thinking about that, like, for me, I feel like that's my goal, that's my job as a mom, to be like, this is you, like, love
Mm-hmm.
yourself regardless of anything outside. You need to love yourself for and learning that we have differences, but that makes you even more special, more unique. um
Exactly. And so, does that mean that it's the parents' responsibility a little bit to teach their kids how to do this?
mm-hmm. I think so.
And I think that not only with words and books and stuff, but also with example, just the way you carry yourself. Because I'm saying that because it is amazing. Like when last night when I was talking about this topic, it's like I was remembering growing up and really paying attention to these things about, my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And I consider my mom the best mom ever. And so whenever I had kids, I wanted to be like her because I wanted my kids to have the experience I had
Mm-hmm.
as the child. But it never occurred to me that there's other ways to do that, right? More inclusive of the
Yes.
mother.
Yeah.
She was never included in that way. It was all about the kids and everybody else. And so I learned that from just being her daughter. That was not a conversation we ever had.
Mm-hmm.
And that was never, like I said, no one ever talked to me about this. It's just was. And now
Mm-hmm.
I'm 33 and I'm having a hard time understanding what it is and even explaining it to somebody else.
Yeah.
It's crazy to me.
It's ingrained in you, right?
Yes, yes. And then the crazy thing about that is that I've always had high self esteem, right? Because of those things that you're talking about, because those conversations they had with me, you, your hair, yourself, everybody's different. And I always accepted myself the way I am because of that. So that was considered to be a good thing because, high self esteem. But that doesn't mean that I learned how to take care of myself as a person, as an
Mm.
individual.
Mm-hmm.
So great. I got high self esteem. Good. Does that mean that I was loving myself the way that I could? No. Because I was putting everybody first. And I was really last, 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 last.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no time for me.
Yeah, that's true. Especially when your mom, I feel like that's when that little switch turns on where you're like, it's my duty. I have to do all these things. I have to make sure everybody's good and everybody's happy and everybody's doing great but then you forget yourself along the way. So,
Mm-hmm.
but you feel good about what you're doing.
Yes. Yes. Which it's great. Um, but we got to pay more attention to the love we're giving to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that, this has been a great time to do that because everything slowed down with the
Yes.
craziness in the world, right?
Good old
And
Corona.
yeah, I know. I keep telling people, like, I don't know if people feel like I'm crazy for saying that out loud. I sometimes feel crazy for saying that out loud, but it it has been a great thing to me personally because I have become like like a whole new person
Mm.
just for the fact that I have more time. There's nowhere to go. So you can't even plan on going places. So now you have more time at home to look at yourself in the mirror and be like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. Asking those simple questions that became really confusing and difficult to answer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think also like we always had the time. We always it's not that we gained more time. We always had the same 24 hours, right? But then we're actually prioritizing things the way that we should be. I think that's what happened.
Exactly. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
That is exactly what it was.
Which
And
is good.
that can be really sad. I mean, it's awesome that you can help people, but who is helping you? So usually the people that are like that, like what we are describing, are people that never have time for themselves, but other people also don't have time for them because they seem to be all set.
Mm-hmm.
And that is sad.
Yeah.
And what that also tells you is no one will ever give you what you don't give yourself. So don't be asking your husband to spend more time with you and doing nice things for you if you don't even do that for yourself.
Right.
Don't be doing that because that's not fair.
That's so true. I never thought of it that way.
And that's what I would do.
You'd ask other people to be like, hey.
I have asked myself in the past, really, like, I'm fine. But if I wasn't, would people notice? Because the fact that I'm smiling doesn't mean anything.
You
I don't
know,
know. Does it mean something?
I was looking, my husband had posted yesterday on social media a picture of a woman who had tried to commit suicide. And on the post, it was her like on like within a whole week span. So you'll see pictures of her on Instagram all happy. At home she was crying. Instagram she was like having the time of her life, eating the best meal, but then at home she wasn't eating, and so like those things that we portray, to other people, it's like some of us portray a different face to other people than how we're really
Different
feeling
reality.
on side. Yeah, everything's always fine. The people that always say that everything is fine are probably the ones that are struggling the most.
Yes.
You know, should always
And
check
so
in.
that is a great example because when you do that to yourself, when someone asks you, how are you? And you say that you're fine when you're not, that is you not loving yourself. That is you not giving your problems or your feelings the importance that it requires.
Yeah, and oh my God, I'm thinking about like Dominican people in our culture.
Dominican people.
In our culture, definitely every time I ask somebody, "Oh, cómo tú estás hoy? Todo bien, gracias a Dios." Y tú? That's it. Doesn't even
Yeah,
give you a
because
chance.
because that question is not being asked to get an answer. It's not. It's purely being nice.
Like
It's not even a question of how are you. It's like un saludo. It's not even a question.
it's like a hi.
Yeah, it's not even a question. It's more like, oh hi, hey, okay. So you know what I have done, and you have heard me do that sometimes, depending on who's asking. I would ask the person, do you want the real question, the real answer, or do you want the regular answer? But I cannot do that with everybody because
That's true.
most people are not asking, looking for an answer. Most people just want to be polite,
Exactly.
and you don't want to disturb their politeness.
No, that's true.
But that is yeah, something to think about. Like when you ask people, be ready for the story. And if you don't want the story, don't ask.
Mhm.
That's it.
Or ask, yeah, or you can ask different question, right? We don't always have to go with the customary one. Be like, hey, how's your week going? Are you okay? Like,
Hmm.
are you doing good? Like,
Yeah,
and it's not that we have to access to everybody, right?
I know. You can
But
be polite just by saying hello.
hmm
You don't have to ask a question, I
hmm
guess.
yeah.
But this topic is really interesting and confusing to me. And I don't know if it's just me, but it's confusing. It's like it has many, many, many layers to it, I think.
hmm
So we will have a part two next week.
Yay.
Yeah. Next week we'll be talking about, okay, so now we know what self-love is not. We talked a little bit about some misconceptions. So let's talk about how we embody it. How do we actually love ourselves? How do we do that?
hmm
So let's do that next week.
Awesome. I can't wait.
I think that'd be awesome. In the meantime, though, everybody follow us on Instagram, Living as Latinas. We are on YouTube, Living as Latinas. If you have any topics that you would like us to discuss, you can email at livingaslatinas@gmail.com. Enjoy your week and remember to be kind. Thank you.
Bye.